It's November 11th, 1918. We're in the Meuse-Argonne region of France. For 4 brutal, grinding years, the Great War has swallowed up an entire generation. But now it's all but over. You can almost feel the world holding its breath, just waiting.
So you have to understand, the armistice, the actual agreement to stop all the fighting, that was already signed. It was done hours ago at 5:10 in the morning in a quiet railway car. So all along this massive 250-mile front, millions of soldiers are they're looking at their watches, waiting for the clock to finally hit 11.
Just try to imagine you're there, lying in the cold, wet mud. You somehow survived 4 years of hell, and you have 60 seconds of war left. Just 60 seconds until you get to go home.
And then at 10:59 a.m., something happens that makes absolutely no sense. A single American soldier gets up, he fixes his bayonet, and he starts charging directly at a German machine gun. Why? Why would anyone do that? That one question. That's what this whole story is about.
To figure out that final, frantic charge, you first have to understand the man. And to do that, well, we need to rewind the clock a bit.
Okay, so there are really 3 key players in this final minute. First, you've got our protagonist, Private Henry Gunther. He's a 23-year-old bank clerk from Baltimore. Then there's his friend and squad leader, Sergeant Ernest Powell, who's really the voice of reason here. And finally, you have the German machine gun crew. These are guys who, just like the Americans, know the war is over. They just want to go home.
And here's a really crucial piece of the puzzle. Henry Gunther was a German-American, and back in 1918, America was just swept up in this intense anti-German hysteria. I mean, in his own hometown of Baltimore, they literally renamed German Street. So for a young guy with German parents, the pressure to prove you were a loyal American was just immense.
So Gunther gets to France, he sees the horrific conditions, and he writes a letter home telling his friend to try and avoid getting drafted. Well, an army censor reads that letter, and the punishment is just swift and brutal. He's demoted on the spot, from sergeant back down to private, in front of his entire company. The shame is so deep that when the news gets back home, his fiancée calls off their engagement. In just a few weeks, he loses everything: his rank, his reputation, his future.
And that public humiliation? It wasn't just a punishment. It became an obsession. It defined every single thing he did from that moment on.
His friends said he just wasn't the same guy anymore. He became obsessed with what they called a determination to make good. It was like the quiet bank clerk was gone, replaced by this guy who was just haunted by one single word: coward.
And you could just see this obsession building over time. After he was demoted, Gunther started volunteering for all the most dangerous jobs, like running messages right through sniper fire. And then, get this, just a few days before the end of the war, he gets shot in the wrist. Now, this was his ticket home, an honorable wound. Anyone else would have jumped at the chance, but he refused to be evacuated. It was like he was determined to clear his name or not go home at all.
And this just sets this perfectly tragic stage for his final act. So at 10:44 a.m., the troops get the message. The war officially ends at 11. Great, right? But then, another order comes down from high command. Keep fighting until the very last second. And in those final few hours, across the whole front, nearly 3,000 men were killed. It was, in a word, a lethal absurdity.
Which brings us right back to that muddy field with the clock just ticking down the final precious moments of the Great War.
It's 10:58 a.m., 2 minutes to go. There's this strange lull in the fighting. And then Gunther is on his feet, fixing his bayonet. His friend, Sergeant Powell, sees him and just screams, "Henry, stop! The war is over in 1 minute." But Gunther, he doesn't even turn around. He just starts to run.
And this is where the story becomes just absolutely heartbreaking. The German soldiers in the machine gun nest, they see him coming. They know the war is over. And they actually stand up, they wave their hands, and they start shouting at him in German and broken English to go back. The very men he is charging are desperately trying to save his life.
But Henry Gunther just keeps coming. He ignores his friend, he ignores the enemy's warnings. He gets so close that the German crew, well, they have no choice. They have to see him as a threat. There's a short burst, just 5 rounds, that cuts through the fog. A single bullet hits him, and he's killed instantly. The time is 10:59 a.m. 1 minute later, the clock strikes 11. As his own unit's record would later say, almost as he fell, the gunfire died away, and an appalling silence prevailed. The war was over.
So what happened in that silence? And how does it finally give us the answer to that question of why?
A few minutes past 11. In what has to be one of the most incredible moments of the entire war, the German soldiers came out of their position. They weren't carrying guns, they were carrying a stretcher. They walked across the now silent no man's land, gently placed Gunther's body on it, and carried him back to his stunned comrades.
And that brings us to the answer. That charge. It wasn't madness. It wasn't a mistake. It was a conscious choice. A tragic transaction. You see, Henry Gunther saw that final minute of the war as his one and only chance to trade a life that he felt was worthless for the one thing he had lost, his honor. He couldn't live with being called a coward, but he could die proving he was a hero.
And the final bitter irony of it all? It worked. The Army posthumously restored his rank to sergeant. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. General Pershing himself officially named him the last American killed in the war. In death, he got everything he so desperately wanted in life.
Henry Gunther became this tragic symbol, really, of the utter pointlessness of war. Peace was literally 1 minute away. But for him, that 1 minute was the last chance he had to change how people saw him, to change the one word that defined him. And it leaves you with this really profound question. What is a reputation worth?